Happy Monday, folks. Chief Meteorologist Tim Pandages here with you. Welcome to Hurricane Hub Live, streaming every weeknight at 8 p.m. here on the 13 News Now app. Now, we do have some issues to talk about out in the Atlantic Basin going forward from here. A little more activity starting to pop on up there, but we've also got some activity in the Pacific Basin as well. No named storms at the moment, but things are starting to get a little bit more active out there. So let's get to it. Let's get over to the maps. Monday, June the 15th. By the way, we are 1/12 of the way through the season now. 15 days in, long ways to go, folks. Invest 90L forms in the Gulf. We talked about this last week. We'll go through it again on exactly what that means. We're going to kind of decode it. The rest of the Atlantic, though, is quiet. It's really just the Gulf, far western Gulf, that's seeing any sort of activity. And this time of the year, that is the area we look for activity. That, the Western Caribbean, and as well as the southwest portions of the Atlantic are the hot spots in June. And then the Pacific, which has been the most active so far this season, 3 named storms already in the books. There's one area of interest there, but it's got a low chance of developing. So back a refresher here, when we normally see our first named storm, when we look back at climatology, it's usually on or around June the 20th. So if our area of interest, that's now Invest 90L, does develop in the next couple of days, we'd be right in line with that climatological start of the hurricane season, or our first named storm at least. So what does Invest 90L actually mean? Well, INVEST is short for investigative area. It's usually tagged for a tropical wave to monitor for the possibility of development. And then we're going to have a number, a record number here. And this recycles from 90 to 99. So there could be multiple 90s, Invest 90Ls, Invest 92Ls per season. These are usually a short-term thing, and then you get the upgrade, if necessary, to a depression, and then a named storm, and then possibly a hurricane if needed. Now, the letter on the end here is either going to be an L, which is a basin indicator for Atlantic, and if we're talking about the Eastern Pacific, there would be an E after that, indicating the Eastern Pacific Basin there. So there's usually a stair-stepping pyramid here of tropical vocabulary. There's a lot here, but we start with a tropical wave, becomes a tropical disturbance, and then we get here, where we are currently, an investigative area, in INVEST. From here, it could go in several directions. It could start to get its act together, be close to impacting land, and it gets coined a potential tropical cyclone, a PTC. This is the newest term of all of these. This was initiated by the National Hurricane Center back in 2017. And the first storm that was a PTC to get a name afterwards was Brad. Back in 2017, that was one of our trivia questions last week. So it can go to potential tropical cyclone, or it can skip that if it starts to organize enough, but it's just not quite a tropical storm yet and become a tropical depression. And then the point that it gets a name is tropical storm and north. So we'll see if we get this to get up to our first named storm, which would be Arthur. It's a possibility. A brand new update from the Hurricane Center coming out at 7:30 this evening did up the chances in the short term of Invest 90L that you can see is actually currently situated over land, sitting over northern Mexico. And part of this is the residual energy from what once was Tropical Storm Christina that we were talking about in the Eastern Pacific last week. So the energy still survives, and it's building off to the north and eventually moving to the east. And if it moves off the coastline, it will be over its fuel source to obtain tropical characteristics, those warm ocean waters. In the Gulf, this time of the year is already plenty warm to support some tropical development. And this point here off the southeast coast of Texas is a hot spot this time of the year. In fact, we're just coming off the 25-year anniversary of Tropical Storm Allison that moved inland over Texas and then kind of sat and spun. Sounds familiar, right? Kind of like Harvey, just wasn't as strong as Harvey was. It was a tropical storm, but it did cause lots and lots of damage. You're not saying this is going to be anything like that, but it's not uncommon this time of the year to get a storm that's going to bring impacts. Now, regardless on if it gets a name or not, don't get hung up on that. It's already bringing impacts to all of southeastern Texas and even up into Louisiana with tons of tropical moisture. It's been raining downpours there for days. There's been ongoing flooding situations. The Weather Prediction Center puts out a flood risk out of 4 levels, and it's at a level 3 in most of southeast Texas going forward here. So it's already bringing impacts. It doesn't matter if it gets a name or not, but the potential's there that it would become a tropical system. 50% chance in 48 hours, another 50% chances over the next 7 days. Now, odds are, once it sits off the coast here, it'll eventually move inland, maybe perhaps over Louisiana, and then stream all of that tropical moisture into portions of the southeastern United States. And that would cause a lot more rainfall to occur, which is necessary or needed. A lot of that area is under a pretty substantial drought, so it would be welcome rainfall. And by that point, it would be weakening, so it would just be widespread tropical downpours there that likely wouldn't last too long. So first name on our 2026 Atlantic storm names, Arthur. This is the 2020 list. Remember, it rotates. There are 6 lists, and it rotates every 6 years. We revisit it. So this was the one of the year that was the most active season on record. We went all the way through this list. Obviously, there are different names here. There were a few that were retired. And then we went on to the Greek alphabet list, if you remember that. And that year was the last year that we will ever use the Greek alphabet for tropical storm names. Now we have a subsequent list that we will go to if, in fact, we do need it after blowing through all of these names. And that would require a very active season, which this year the outlooks are not pointing in that direction. Hopefully. All right, here's a look at tropical wave Invest 90L on satellite imagery. This is going to be the infrared filter, and this is going to give us a good depiction on the intensity of the convection within these storms. This is pointing out the cloud top temperatures. Colder the cloud tops, higher up in the atmosphere the thunderstorm clouds are building, meaning they're more intense. What indicates the colder cloud tops are going to be the shades of black and white. And you can see here in the last couple of frames, we are getting a blow up of convection here on the lee side of the mountains off to the east along the coastline there of Mexico and right over Brownsville as well. And that's leading to a big impulse and lots of rainfall in those areas as well. The storm center, which doesn't really have a center yet because it's just a broad area of low pressure. It's a trough of low pressure. So there's no defined center, which is why models are still having a tough time depicting exactly where it is and where it may track. I'll show you the spaghetti plots here in just a minute. But plenty of convection here, likely just building from the tropical moisture that's in place here. And this is asymmetrical at this time, lopsided. All the activities at least where it's depicted from the Hurricane Center on the eastern side of things. And this is all lifting up into southern and southeastern portions of Texas. Now, I want to throw up here radar out in Houston. And the rain has tapered off a little bit here, but notice this plume that rolled through the area earlier. Widespread, very heavy rain now moving over Lake Charles, over towards Alexandria. In portions of Louisiana, moving farther south, Corpus Christi, and eventually down towards Brownsville. More waves of tropical downpours pretty much following the topography of the coastline there and lifting off to the east and northeast, just inundating these areas with heavy rainfall. And if we go way out, we'll go out 7 days here, and you can see the expected rainfalls, another half a foot to even more than that, according to the European model here, puts out another 6 to 9 inches in places just to the east of Houston, 4 to 6 inches additionally there. They've already picked up pretty much that much already. Lafayette, Louisiana, 4 to 6 inches, 2 to 4 inches out in Louisiana. And notice that moisture plume does eventually expand over into portions of Alabama and eventually Georgia and maybe up into the Carolinas as well. All areas that are experiencing some pretty significant drought conditions, so it would be welcome. And a lot of times that's how you break a drought. Tropical systems bringing large amounts of rainfall over a shorter amount of time, and that can certainly help things out there earlier in the season. Here's the spaghetti plots I was telling you about. This is all we have so far of the models that have run on Invest 90L right now, and it shows the majority of what we have all over the place. Notice how the center's depicted in all different locations according from where the Hurricane Center thinks it is. Most of it thinks is off to the east and southeast, and then just kind of drifts and meanders over the mountainous locations in northern Mexico. And then there are a couple other models here that think that it's already out over the open waters of the Gulf. And this one here tracks it along the coast of southeast Texas, over Louisiana, and eventually over Mobile, Alabama, here in northern Florida. We'll see what happens here. The overall trajectory likely lifts it off to the north and east, so we'll see if it does hit the water and develop. We're going to kind of resurrect this model comparison chart that we had from last year. And what you're looking at here is going to be the comparison between the GFS, the American, in the yellow, and then the European model in red. And these are isobars. We got to get the closed low first before it'll even show up here. Right now, we don't have that. But going out in time, you're going to look for a closed center, and the closer the isobars are, the tighter the pressure gradient, meaning the stronger the storm. And I'll tell you, I already looked through this. It doesn't really show much, and I'll show it to you here. as we go a little bit farther out in time. It looks like there's some sort of agreement here between the European red and the GFS yellow of some sort of broad area of rotation closed, sitting well to the southwest of Houston, right over Corpus Christi here along the coastline. Again, probably over open water, so get the chance to kind of organize and get some of that warm water to fuel its development. But look how brief it is. We kind of lose it, and then as we jump farther out, it does look like the European tries to carry some sort of semblance of that low, tracking it up and over the southeast, and this is up by this Friday into the weekend, that we get it over just to the west of Atlanta there, again bringing the rainfall. So that tracks with what we were seeing on the rainfall depiction there from the European, that scoots due east offshore, gone, and would be on to the next system from there. Now, water temperature, sea surface temperature anomalies are warming up. Each time I show you this map, it gets updated, and we are seeing more and more darker shades of red and orange, indicating water temperatures that are climbing well above the seasonal normal for this time of the year. So we're looking at the reds here that are up and over a degree above normal for this time of the year Celsius, and even throughout the Caribbean, all of the Gulf of Mexico. Notice you're seeing a lot of red here, indicating very warm sea surface temperatures, and that's expected this time of the year. And then you've got the Eastern Pacific that is just widespread, very warm waters, and this is going to lead to a more active Eastern Pacific season, most likely, with the onset of El Nino now. That's only going to get stronger and stronger as we progress through the season. Now, how about the dust situation? Now, right now, we do have a big old plume of dust coming off the Cabo Verde Islands, off the coast of Africa, and as we talked about, this is detrimental in the storm development. Not only is it, dusty, dry in the mid-levels, which is not conducive to tropical development. You need a moisture profile. But it also helps to kind of block out the sun and reflect some of those sun rays, leading to cooler sea surface temperatures if the plume is large enough and persistent enough. And this one looks like it kind of gets dispersed a little bit and saturates a little bit more. And then they've got another one coming off the coastline there, probably by the end of next week, and another one working into the Caribbean. And eventually they do make it over through the Caribbean, and even parts of the Gulf Coast states will get some dusty skies every now and then. So that's the latest on the Atlantic. We'll watch Invest 90L and see if it does develop. Again, odds have ticked up slightly. In fact, pretty significantly, actually, over the last day or so. They went from low chances, 20% chance, now at 50%, both in the short and the long term. Coming up after a quick break, we're going to get a check on the Pacific Basin. And then after that, we're going to go into Hurricane Hub Live trivia. So we'll see you after a quick break. All right, welcome back to Hurricane Hub Live. Let's get out to the Eastern Pacific Basin. And as we looked at the satellite imagery last week, we saw a very evident Central American gyre with a big, broad, spinning area of low pressure sitting over Central America. Not so evident at this time. It was likely a driving force behind the development of both Boris and Christina that were weak tropical storms that made landfall in Mexico, South Mexico, last week. And as we just talked about, Invest 90L, likely some of that residual energy from what once was Tropical Storm Christina. Now, something that's a very big difference from when we looked at the Atlantic Basin as compared with the Eastern Pacific is notice this large area here of convective features. This is part of the intertropical convergence zone. And as we go through the season, this does begin to lift its way farther north and gain latitude. And as we get these clusters of convection to start to organize, they eventually lift and detach from the ITCZ and go on to become a developing tropical system. And within this cluster right now, there is one little cluster that we're watching that's tagged by the National Hurricane Center. Low chances here. This is a 20% chance of developing in the short term, 48 hours, and another 20% chance over the next 7 days. So unlikely to develop. And notice the general direction it would be moving in. Notice what's out to the north and west of it. Not a whole lot, meaning more stable environmental conditions there. So likely not conducive for it to develop at all. And there's Hawaii, so it's not all that far away. And that's something we did talk about last week when we had our El Nino expert on, is that when you get a strong El Nino to take shape and you've got well above normal sea surface temperatures in the Eastern Pacific, that does increase the odds of impacts from tropical systems to places like Hawaii, and even, believe it or not, as you get up towards the southwest parts of the United States. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago that there was a decaying tropical system that made it up. It may have even still been named into Southern California. I'd have to look that up, and maybe I'll bring that to you on a following HHL episode. But it's possible, and with a strong El Nino developing, we could possibly see that this season. So our scorecard for the Atlantic versus the Eastern Pacific. Of course, the East Pac is winning with 3 named storms so far, up to the C named Christina, and we'll see if we get any more in the short term. In the Atlantic, we may get one. We get the 50-50 odds there of getting Arthur here in the next week or so. We'll see if that happens. But right now, Atlantic, of course, is at 0. Now, NOAA did put out their Eastern Pacific outlook for the season. Now, a normal season in the Eastern Pacific is 15 named storms, 8 hurricanes, half of those being major Category 3 or greater, calling for an average or even above average season in the Eastern Pacific, and they give a range, 15 to 22. And based on how warm those waters will be and how quiet the Atlantic may be, I would probably lean towards the higher end of that average there, or that range, up to 22. 9 to 14 hurricanes, that's a lot of hurricanes, and 5 to 9 major hurricanes, Category 3 or higher. So we'll see how the season presents there, but that's the latest outlook from NOAA. And those Eastern Pacific storm names, again, we've already knocked off Amanda, Boris, and Christina. Next up would be Douglas, Alida, Fausto, and Genevieve coming on up here to wrap up the first 7 names of the Eastern Pacific season. So coming up after a quick break, we're going to get into HHL. We've got some stories to share with you as well, so we'll see you after a quick break. Welcome back to HHL. Have you ever wondered how powerful storms come to be called by names like Katrina, Sandy, and Andrew? Meteorologist Evan Stewart explains, uncovering the fascinating story behind the naming of hurricanes.
Years, the National Weather Service has named tropical systems to reduce confusion when two or more storms occur at the same time. But naming hurricanes dates back hundreds of years. In the West Indies, storms were named after the saint's day on which they occurred. Other storms were named for the areas they hit. Of course, the names were given after the fact. The United States Weather Bureau started naming hurricanes in 1950 using the phonetic alphabet: Abel, Baker, Charlie, and so forth. In 1953, the practice of using women's names began, starting with Tropical Storm Alice. In the 1970s, after years of pressure, the National Weather Service stopped using only female names. In 1979, both male and female names were included in the list. Today, the World Meteorological Organization maintains a rotating set of 6 lists using English, Spanish, and French names, since those are languages spoken in the Atlantic Hurricane Basin.
Now, during hurricane season, you may hear us reference the hurricane cone. But what exactly is it, and how does it help predict accurate weather? Meteorologist Craig Moeller breaks that down.
Knowing exactly where hurricanes will go, it's a tricky business. When the National Hurricane Center issues forecasts, it uses a cone to project where the probable center of the storm will be over time. The cone is formed by enclosing the projected forecast area by circles at various points in time. The size of each circle is determined so that 2/3 of the 5-year historical forecast errors fall within the circle. Let me explain. 2/3 of the storms over the past 5 years wound up within 46 miles of where the storm was forecast to be out 24 hours. You go 48 hours out, the storms, 2/3 of the time, they fell within 79 miles. The farther out you go, the bigger the circle gets. By the time you get out 120 hours or 5 days, the circle encompassing 2/3 of the storms expands to have a radius of 240 miles. Now you simply connect those forecast circles and you get the area that's most likely to have the center of the storm over the coming days, making the cone of uncertainty. While the cone projects the probable track and timing of the center of the system, it's important to remember what it does not tell us. It doesn't speak to the size, the intensity, or the structure of the system. You'll need to turn to trusted meteorologists and the National Hurricane Center for information on that.
Now, when talking about hurricanes and tropical systems, categories are important. But why is that, and how is that even determined? Let's dive into it. Hurricanes are categorized by their maximum sustained winds using the Saffir-Simpson scale of measurement, with ranges from Category 1 all the way up to Category 5. Tropical systems reach the title of hurricane when their maximum sustained winds surpass 74 miles per hour. At this level, a hurricane is a lower grade Category 1. Maximum winds within a Category 1 storm range from 75 miles per hour to 95 miles per hour. Typically, Category 1 storms can cause some damage. Now, from 96 to 110 miles per hour is a Category 2 hurricane. Extensive damage can occur with an impact from one of these storms. From 111 to 129 miles per hour, we are now at a Category 3 major hurricane. Devastating damage is expected from these. It only gets more intense from here. 130 to 156 miles per hour is a major Category 4 hurricane. These disastrous storms can bring catastrophic damage. If maximum sustained winds are measured above 157 miles per hour, then we get in the range of the Saffir-Simpson scale of a major Category 5 hurricane. As you can imagine, with winds that strong, the damage would be catastrophic. For more information as hurricane season continues, visit the 13 News Now Hurricane Fast Facts playlist on YouTube. You can get to that by scanning the QR code on your screen right now in front of you. There you can find information on supplies you should have on hand, emergency resources, and storm facts, and a whole lot more. We'll be right back after a quick break. Welcome back. Time for trivia. Here's the question tonight. What was the first formally named tropical storm in the Atlantic Basin? Was it Abigail, Alan, Alice, or Adam? Oh, the answer for you tomorrow night on Hurricane Hub Live, or even Wednesday night if I see you then. But for the latest here on all hurricane information you need, scan the QR code to download the 13 News Now Hurricane Guide. It's got information on supplies you should have on hand, emergency numbers you might need, and a whole lot more. Remember, Hurricane Hub Live is every night, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, with all the latest tropical breaking news to let you know to stay ahead of any storms. We'll see you back here tomorrow night at 8.